We talk about that same thing a lot with our clients of taking the time to solve the problems versus we can fix your problem by just making it really big and then you'll figure out how to live within the space. Because if we try to do that on paper up front, it's going to take us a lot more time, and time equals money and da da da. But yeah, like there's such better ways to figure out how to solve the problems that we have in space without just making it excessively large.
Today on the podcast, we had Sam and Andrew Teitt from Bellepoint Company out of Ohio, and we really dove deep on the family story and just the importance and intentionality that goes into building a home and why really home builders need to celebrate themselves and the work that they do. And it's just really a very heartfelt episode. You're going to dive deep on really what makes these boys tick and really how their company is set up for not only this generation, but the next. So without further ado, here is Sam and Andrew. Welcome to Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, the host. Today, I'm joined by the Bellepoint Company. I've got Sam and Andrew Teitt out of Ohio. Is that right?
Yes. Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. All right. Very good. Well, I got to meet you guys last fall. We had a mutual pellet connection. Your pellet owner and my pellet owner knew each other. And so we got together in Minnesota. You guys were on your way. Unfortunately, I couldn't join you. You guys were on a cool little pheasant hunting trip out to Sutton Bay, South Dakota. I assume you guys had a great time without me?
It was a blast. Yeah, it was a ton of fun.
I've told those guys before, I've been out there a few times. What I love about that is it's a deeper experience, right? It's 2 days. You really get to know the people you're traveling with, the brands you're working with. But one of the things that I like about companies that think like that is you're more interested in a relationship and making it deeper. And not every company can do that, or every relationship has the time to do that. But I appreciate companies that are willing to sort of invest in their people. And Pell has done that with me, and I know they're doing it with you too. So it's, shout out to them.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And Andrew, your vest, I was commenting before we went on, I thought that vest was a Sutton Bay vest, and you got some pretty big temperature swings right now. What was it this morning? What was the temperature out, and what is it now?
20 degrees at my house, and it's my truck said 74. Ooh. So what, 36 degrees or 46 degrees, whatever that is.
Math.
Yeah,
there we go.
I like a good vest. It pretty much anytime it's, I don't know if you don't get as quite as cold as it in Minnesota. We went through about 3 weeks of minus 25, which is cold. But after that, anything above 10, it's like I don't even wear a jacket. So I wear vests from about February to, well, I didn't even wear one today. So I guess only 2 months. But I pretty much don't wear jackets anymore. It's just vests. I have so many vests at this point. I like vests and boots. I have a lot of vests and boots.
Yeah.
Let's introduce you guys to the audience. You guys are younger chaps. You guys are probably what, in your late 30s?
Yeah,
mid 30s for me. I just had a birthday.
Atta boy, happy birthday.
Yeah, my daughter and I have the same birthday. It's pretty unique.
Do you really?
We got to celebrate together. She turned 2, I turned 35.
That's really cute. When they get a little bit older, my daughter is not, I have a 9, 6, and a 5-year-old, but they're always obsessed with like, will they catch you? I'm sure at 2 years old, she hasn't caught on to that yet, but it's kind of fun when you have the same birthday. At some point she'll be like, hey dad, at what point am I going to catch you? And be like, yeah, you'll catch me when I'm dead.
Someday. Yeah. When I'm dead. I'm 41.
You're 41. Okay. When you guys were up here last fall, we talked a little bit about it, and it's all over your website. It's honestly what I want to talk about probably the most. There's so many, I don't want to call them mom and pop, but I love family run businesses, and I was part of one. My mom and dad were builders and designers. So many people follow the footsteps of their family, and sometimes it's atypical. Like mine was pretty atypical. I actually knew I didn't want to do that. They retired, and then after they retired, I'm like, oh, good. Now I can become a builder. I don't have to have the mantle of like, quote, taking over the company. That's a whole nother episode. But what was kind of your journey? Because were your parents and was your family involved in building before you got into it as well?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah. It's funny you say that about your family, because there's times where I'm like, dang, I wish I had some coattails that I could have taken advantage of. But no, we both went to Ohio State, both went to business school. I studied real estate finance and kind of thought I wanted to go into real estate development. And so I started working with a really small outfit doing a small residential project, and graduated. Took me 5 years. I did a victory lap at the end of it, but I ended up graduating from college in 2007, worked for that company, went into 2008, 2009, recession hit, that kind of all fell apart, like quite literally fell apart. And that was obviously a rough time in the industry. But the guy who owned, one of the partners who owned the development company, also had a custom home building side. And so at that time, there were still a couple of projects that were going on. And he's like, hey, do you want to do this work? And sure, give it a try. And really fell in love with it. I loved the opportunity. My day would be this very wealthy or an accomplished client. And then I also got to be with the guys who were just the blue collar. And I just love the diversity of being able to connect those two worlds, and actually did it pretty comfortably because I'm somewhat refined and somewhat redneck myself. And so it just felt like very natural. And then Andrew's story, well, you can tell your
Yeah. So I'm the youngest of 7. Sam's the middle.
Yeah.
There's 4 boys in our family. There's 3 girls. And so we always joke that Sam is the oldest of the youngest and the youngest of the oldest. And so there's kind of these two generations within our own family. But so Sam was the closest boy in age to me. So we grew up, and it's interesting to be in some ways, because I'm the youngest, I was forgotten. So my parents would leave me everywhere. But Sam was always there as a figure that would, like, essentially a dad, I mean, at that point. But so we grew up dreaming together. That's what young kids do. And we always said that one day we would do something. At that point, we thought we'd be much more successful than we were, but we fell into custom home building. So
Was your, when you were early on, were there other business owners in the family or entrepreneurs, or how did you both know that you wanted to go to business and then start a company?
Yeah, not really.
our mom's actually a Presbyterian pastor,
Yeah.
and our dad is a retired biologist.
Kudos to your mom then. You're a little bit like Jesus. Their parents left him alone at the temple for a couple of days too. So it sounds like your mom was just practicing what she was preaching.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
fine.
that's right.
Andrew, I wouldn't take it too personally. If anything, it's a
Yeah.
compliment that she just left you alone and didn't know where you were.
Yeah.
That's right. It turned out all right, I think.
It turned out okay. It sounds like you went to business school after college.
Mhm.
What did you do, and how soon after did you guys join forces and basically
Yeah.
create Bellepoint Company?
Graduated from college, worked for that home building company for a little bit of time. Great experience in terms of what I was able to do for the company, just project manage. I was doing the bookkeeping. I was kind of doing everything. But I knew that there really wasn't going to be a long-term future for me at that firm. There were 3 partners, some kind of toxic relationships. And I was like, I think I can go and do this on my own. Conveniently, Andrew was graduating from Ohio State with an economics degree. And I mean, if you're going to jump off a cliff, it's good to hold someone's hand. And so I was like, hey, Andrew, why don't we do this together? And so he's like, yeah, let's go. And so we kind of joke, like, when we started in 2012, we would have raked people's leaves for
In
money.
fact, we did.
We did rake people's. I
Yeah,
mean, we were doing landscaping work.
Yeah. When I was in middle school, I started this really unsuccessful landscaping company. But apparently I had a charming smile, so everyone would sign up. So we were doing, like, maintenance and stuff like that. And I actually continue to do that through college. Would hire people in the season here in Central Ohio to run that. That company was Bellepoint Lawn Care, but when we joined, we're going to take it up a notch and call it the Bellepoint Company. So
That's
how
funny.
we
So you named it Bellepoint even way back when you were doing yard work.
Yeah.
So on your website, and I love branding, I love storytelling, I love everything about it. I'd be curious to know how much of this was deliberate, or because, like, your website now is fantastic. I'm sure it's a far cry from where you started in 2012, because it's really polished and very well done right now. But what I loved about it was, I'll just read it. It says basically, it's a home that holds the sacred pages of our story, a story of 7 kids and 4 horses, 6 sheep, and a dozen chickens. My home is where playing outside past dark was easy to do, where we dreamed of futures, where many of us got married, where our kids now explore the 40 acres of property, making memories of their own. And then there's this comment about when the bell rang, it was time for dinner. And even if you grew up in an urban environment, I think you can see that. Like right now, I could close my eyes and envision, I've been seeing enough movies, Old Yeller and whatever, wherever you grew up in the country, like you can very much relate to this time in life where you could play at the streets. Like I had a little cul-de-sac, and I can't remember if we had a little boat air horn or something. We had a couple of acres, and it was time to come home. And out at our cabin, we did have a bell or a triangle. We had one of those dumb triangle things that you see in music class that you don't know what anyone uses it for. And is that where Bellepoint came from? Was that symbol and that kind of ideology even at an early age?
Thank you. love that resonates, because sometimes, like, I think when we first wrote that, we were like, is this too fluffy? But like, I love that it does resonate. Yeah. So two things. Yes, we had a dinner bell on our farm, and like, just like it's, it says on our website, like we were all over the place. There's 7 kids at one point there on the farm, and our mom would come out and ring the dinner bell, or dad or whoever was responsible for ringing the dinner bell, and we'd all come running back to the house. And usually it was with a couple of our friends in tow. And we just grew up in a very welcoming, we're very blessed in the family that we grew up in, and there was always room for extras at the dinner table. And so that's what home meant to us. But interestingly, we also grew up on Bellepoint Road. And
Oh, wow. The double
I
B.
joke, yeah. So sometimes people are like, Bellepoint, where's Bellepoint come from? And I'm like, our last name's Teitt. And we didn't think that would go over so well on signs in your front yard. And it usually gets a chuckle. But yeah, that's the story behind the name of Bellepoint. But it's, from a brand perspective, it really has been like, what is home to us, and like, why do we do what we do, is going back to that idea, or that picture of like that place where people are welcomed and we provide comfort. And we work with a lot of people. We've been very fortunate to build some really cool houses that cost lots of money. And these are people who have created abundance for their family. And I think one of the things that's cool is to see that all of that hard work is really an opportunity for them to show that love through the abundance of their homes. And so we get to do really cool. It's like, do you need a theater in your home? But no, but like, how cool is that we get to do those types of spaces and things like that. So anyway.
Well, I mean, I love the approach. I mean, I think oftentimes it's important for us to remember, as home builders across the country, and regardless of how important of an industry home building is. Obviously, you guys build beautiful work, very architecturally driven stuff. It's really impressive. And everyone scales up through their company. And it doesn't, I think sometimes, I'll just use myself as an example. Like I love to build really high-end homes, but I don't want to lose sight of it. Like, a home is a home. Like, a shelter has been needed ever since Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden. And
right.
Shelter is pretty important. And
Right.
I've been talking about it more and more lately on the podcast, really to sort of, for builders to take a step back, look in the mirror and say, you know what, you're doing a good job. Give yourself a pat on the back, because it's not an easy job. If anyone told you building was easy, well, you got another thing coming.
It's an understatement.
But it doesn't mean that it's not very rewarding. I mean, it's akin to a family, right? I mean, obviously being married is, even good marriages are hard. Bad marriages must be terrible. Children, like raising children, is the best thing I've ever done in my life, but doesn't make it easy. It just makes it very rewarding. I tend to go here a lot because I'm an emotional person, but I also think home building is such an intimate job. I think that I honestly can't think of almost any other job where you're in people's life so intimately, and yet you become grafted into their family. Not everyone has a relationship that lasts forever, but plenty do. I mean, at Christmas, when you get your thank you cards from your homeowners, and they may be built for Tom and Susie, and all of a sudden you see a picture of little Bobby was 2 when you built their home, and now he's 15. You're like, holy smokes, how did he get that big? It kind of puts in perspective of what we're doing across the country, and it needs to be valued, and it needs to be appreciated.
Yeah. Well said, man. I love it.
Do you think, you mentioned, about being present? That's something that means a lot to me. I mean, I do a lot of that on the Curious Builder. We talked about the wellness camps, things like that. And I feel like it's an ever moving target, having young children. What does being present mean to you, both in running your business, but also what does being present mean when you're designing people's homes, and how do you help? It's like one is, how do you practice it? Because obviously, if your mom's a preacher, this, a sermon that is seen and not heard is well more received than one that is heard and not seen. And so how do you show not only your team and your people about being present, but how do you also help your clients be present for their families?
Yeah, I like that. I always say more is caught than taught. So a lot of what we do. So I think we're unique. We're a growing business. We're at 13 full-time employees at this point, and we're rapidly growing. But I think being present for our clients, that's the first way out. That's my least favorite one to answer. My family's more important, so I'm going to end with that, not start with that. But so Sam and I are really involved in every project that we do, and in one form or another. And so I think that's a little bit unique for what we do specifically. Building relationships, I think we have. I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I know. Yeah. It's a
That's
hard
why I'm looking for an
question.
answer, because I think it's a doozy. I mean,
Yeah.
we could spend the next 5 hours or 5 years working on this.
I guess
That's a big
the
one.
easiest way. So my wife and I host a party in December. This is the best way to explain our relationship with our clients. We call it the fancy party. And ultimately what we're trying to do is just bring our best friends together and raise money for a cause. We were able to raise $5,000, but at the fancy party were our clients that we're building for.
Mhm.
And so like, that's just the type of relationship that we're having with these people, where they're just, I mean, we almost like become a part of their life. Like you said, they're friends of ours. A lot of our clients are on a friend level at this point. So I think we always say we love building homes, but it's the relationship that to us that is most important. Like, we want to build your home. We want to build a relationship, and getting to know our clients is probably what we're most passionate about, getting to know their family, and, creating these spaces where their kids and they can enjoy these holidays that for us was our parents' farm,
Yeah.
the sanctuary.
I think the other thing too, like maybe pragmatically as we approach our work from like a design perspective, is our clients and most people in this day and age are leading very busy lives. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot of times is like, when we build the home, we're not just building, like you said, Mark, it's like, it's not just shelter, but we're building spaces where, one, we can decrease clutter. Two, like, things have a place where, whether that be like you walk into your mud room and like everything has a slot that it fits in. And how do we decrease the stress that you guys feel as a family as you come into these spaces, so that you can be present, so that it is not, your first introduction to coming home is like the stressful. We used to do a lot of renovation work, and people would talk to them and tell me some of the pain points of your home. And they're like, "Oh, I hate walking in the mudroom." And I'm like, "Let me guess, the laundry room's in the mudroom?" And they're like, "Yes." And I trip over laundry. Like, there's nothing better than telling you you're behind on your domestic tasks than tripping over your laundry basket as you walk in your door on a daily basis. And so I think, again, going back to just from a practical approach, is designing houses where we really have tailored the home to the way that our clients live life, to the number of kids they have, to the way that they do things. One of the things that we talk about is like, do you clean your house, or do you have a cleaning crew? If you're cleaning your house, like having cleaning closets on each floor so that we're not dragging a vacuum around the house, and just really practical ways of understanding how people live their life to try to decrease the things that cause stress, that does reduce that our clients' ability. And it seems sometimes you're like, does it all relate? I think it does, because I think, and then I think also, as Andrew said, relationships, building relationships, one of our core values is put people first. And it was like, it's just like a very like succinct, I guess, saying, but ultimately it's like, just care about people, like care about who they are. I think our mom taught us, and our dad as well, but our mom especially, like, everyone has a story. Everyone deserves to be heard. Everyone deserves to be slowed down to listen to. And I think being present is also just like, listen to their story and get to know them. And that's been something that's also really fun, is that, like Andrew mentioned, we have clients that are coming to holiday parties, but then we have these blue collar guys that, we'll go and have lunch, and they'll be, crying at lunch, telling us about their family and what's going on. And just, it's fun to be able to live in that space where we get to form those relationships. And I think that truly is what we're most passionate about. And I think that, quite honestly, I think at the end of a project, you talked about like, home building's not easy. I think at the end of the project, and you're going to have turbulence, like, it's inevitable. We're not going to get through this perfectly. There will be conflict, but if our relationship is built and you understand that there's a high level of trust, and you know who we are as people and all that sort of stuff, we can work through conflict. Just like in, any relationship, we're going to work through this because we understand who the other is and we care deeply for one another.
This episode is brought to you by Adaptive. For over 2 years now, I've been using Adaptive. It's an incredible game changer. It's AI technology based. It helps you with bill pay. And as a builder, there's very few things that anger our subs more than not being paid on time. Well, those days are gone. Not only do you know exactly where you are, but you can pay people through your ACH channels, making draws extremely quick. With one click of a button, which used to take hours, my office staff is now able to generate a draw to the bank or to the client in literally seconds, The thing that I appreciate the most about Adaptive is their ability to keep changing. We've given them 3 or 4 feedbacks on things that we need as builders, and within just a few months, they're rolling those things out. This is saving us hours per week and days per month in terms of our efficiency. If you're looking to upgrade your business, I'd highly recommend Adaptive. You can reach out to them at adaptive.com or listen to the Curious Builder podcast, episode 15 or episode 80, where we dive into their origin story. I think people are constantly looking for connection. We're doing our first spec home in 16 years. Do you guys do specs or no?
Yeah.
We can talk maybe a little bit after this.
You're gonna love it.
And so, but the problem is that, most spec homes I go into, I'm not super impressed with because they are trying to appeal to the masses because they don't know who the buyer is. And I guess doing a handoff here between two topics, but I guess the thought process is like when we are connecting to people. I just interviewed a landscape architect today, and she had a really neat point of view. And she just said that the thing she likes to do is listen, which I get that, but I like to listen to people and I like to listen to the land. And she's a landscape architect, so it makes sense. I've just never heard, I have often said that there's multiple people that design your home. There's the architect, there's the client, there's the builder, there's interior designer, and the land has a part in your design. But I've never heard that term, like I'm going to listen to the land. It sounded very whimsical. I just like that sort of that thought process that, to me, it's like Russell Crowe in The Gladiator before he battles, like grabbing the dirt, like holding it. I'm going to listen to the land. If you do that, the homeowner might be like, wait, is Andrew and Sam going to fight me right now? Be like, no, I'm listening to the land. But where I'm going with this is I need a touchstone. I need something to react to. Honestly, to design on a blank sheet of paper is a rare skill set and really difficult. I remember my dad used to say this all the time. The way to success is to not please everybody because you're going to fail. But you might as well design to what their want is or what their need is, because offenses are going to come one way or another. So you might as well do the thing that you're really passionate about. I'm really putting a ton of story branding and intentionality into this home that we're creating. And it's very specific. And that can be a bit of a danger because I still have to sell the house. I mean, if you get too specific or too unique, you can run into danger. But how do you make it special? How do you make the story unique? I don't want people to go test drive a BMW, an Audi, and a few other great cars and then just decide, oh, I'm just going to pick that one based on price. Like, I don't want this to be a price game. I want this to be, you're not even looking at another car. You walk into this house feels different. I want this house. That's what I want to create. How do you think about that when you create a spec?
So it's funny because this is our second spec that we've ever done that we're in contract. We close at the end of this month, but the funny part of this is it's actually the same floor plan of the house that Jen, my wife, who works with us, she runs our interior design, Jen and I live in. So we quite literally designed a house for ourselves that would meet, going back to what I just said about the way we think about our clients and how to fix it. Like we did that for ourselves. And then we were like, let's build this as a spec. And we changed some elements of it, especially on the exterior, and we built it. And so I think that same kind of thought process continues. We're in framing right now on another spec house that's on the market, but the same kind of thought process is also kind of like, I want to build this the way that I would want to live in a house. And I think that part of the way that we think is like, we've had the opportunity to build custom homes for a lot of different people. And so we've been able to take like bits and pieces of every one of those projects and what works and what worked incredibly well versus what didn't work really well. And we've been able to take that level of experience. And one thing I will say is, even on the spec side of what we do, we are huge. We see the value of the architect's involvement as vitally important. I think that a lot of times when you see spec houses go awry, it's like, hey, we could save a bunch of money here if we just didn't involve a really talented / expensive architect. And I think our theory has been like, no, that partnership is really integral to us selling this. And so I think thinking about like, how would we live in this space / investing in that architecture and making sure that it is architecturally distinctive, that it is well thought out, well planned. We kind of get to do a lot of that like crowdsourcing in terms of what do people want in homes, and then just really being able to put that into a house. And I think honestly, the hardest part of the spec is like, figuring out where you should stop. You know what I mean?
Well, I 100% agree with that. I mean, you fall in love with your own work,
Right.
and before you know it, you've outpriced the market. So
Yeah.
you sort of need some people on your team that can say no, or someone
the
that can kind of
bridle. Yeah.
counterbalance your enthusiasm. I
Right.
think a lot of builders have done and do what you do in the sense that your touchstone, your keystone is yourself. It's your own family. And so
Right.
you're reproducing this home that you already kind of knows what works. I mean, you have the unique perspective of you've lived in it.
Right.
So now you can improve it. This is what I would do to make the house better. I mean, oddly enough, the home that we're doing, we're calling it Misahus, which means cozy in Swedish. And so we're creating a whole brand around it, but it's all natural materials and wellness. It's 50% me. It's fit for my family. If I joke, if I could afford my own work, I'd move into it. I sometimes joke with my clientele, they'll be upset that something's a little too expensive. And I'll be like, with a smile on my face, is don't feel bad. I can't afford my work either. And, but anyway, a lot of that house will be me. And I think it's important because our companies do represent our values. I think we just, obviously it's a hard thing because you have to value it. You could be, if you get too zealous or too unique, then all of a sudden you're building a unicorn house that nobody wants. And that's obviously dangerous.
When we were designing our second spec, we sat down in a meeting, and Sam was, visibly frustrated, and what's going on. He was like, I wouldn't live in that house. And that was when we were in the architectural plan development. So we said, okay, that's incredibly important to us, any house we design from a spec perspective. So we set up a meeting with the architect, and we got the plans manipulated to a point where we came back and we're like, both of us looked at it and said, 100% we would live in that house. And now we're in love with it. Yeah. So we're designing these spec houses that
and we wish we could afford to live in.
Yeah. that we desire to live in. And I think I'm not going to pick on Columbus because I love Columbus. I love the city we live in. We're in a unique market where architecture is not the focus of most of the builders in this market. And there's a lot of houses that go up and they are not architecturally
well executed.
Well executed. They all look the same. And I think when we're even in the neighborhood that we're putting our specs in right now, I think we are just architecturally unique, and people drive by the house, and we're a little aggressive on our theory here, but like they just look different and people are attracted to them. They look really, really good.
Think of a Ferrari. You're not driving the Ferrari because it's red. There are a lot of red cars. You're driving because the design is sexy. I mean, it is very well designed, and the amount of time, and I mean, it's elegant, and I don't know enough about cars to speak about all the engines and everything else, but there's a reason why people gravitate. Like, that looks cool.
Right.
Now, you could argue whether it's a family car and all those kinds of, but that's also not what it was designed to be. It's not meant to be a family car with a bunch of car seats and all that kind of stuff. Design does matter, and good design yields a premium. And I think typically, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually when we say really good design, it usually does mean it is more expensive. But I think you can have very simple design, and it can actually cut away. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate it I know my personality sometimes, at least when I was younger, was if this is good, then 100 of them must be even better. And as I've gotten older, my wife is more of a minimalist, and it's made its way a little bit into my company and some of my thought process is that less is more. It actually takes, for instance, in design, it is actually much harder to design a small house than it is to design a big house. Designing a big house is actually pretty easy. I'm an armchair designer, right? We have architects and designers. Like right now, I have a client in this beautiful home. I'm sure it's definitely over budget. And so the question is, how do we shave off $1 million, $2 million?
Yeah.
Well, you've got to get the house smaller. But the old joke is, I want a small house with a lot of rooms.
Yeah,
that's a big house.
Yeah.
Most people don't know what they're looking at. They'll throw at a number. I think the only thing they can relate to when we ask them, right, is like, how big of a home? People love to talk about size. And it's one of my it's an important question. You do have to ask it, only because it provides some common ground. But the only thing I hate more than what size are you thinking about is, what's your per foot cost? I hate that. I don't know a builder that I've ever met that says they like that question. And the reason being is, like, how much does your car weigh? I don't know. How much does your grocery bag weigh? I don't know. It depends what's in it. Exactly. Right. I mean, it depends what's in your house. So I understand why clients ask it, because they don't know what else to ask. It's just, I guess that's an opportunity. I shouldn't hate it so much. It's a question. It's a way for us to then show our knowledge and demonstrate, to really craft the story of intentionality of, like, what do you want? What is important to you? I'll tell you what it costs once I know what's important to you, because I could build you a square rectangle box. I could like a metal, a shipping container, or we could build one of your beautiful homes.
Yeah, we talk about that same thing a lot with our clients of taking the time to solve the problems versus we live in central Ohio where it's a new subdivision is just an old cornfield. And so nothing's really landlocked. You can just keep going. And I think that same mentality has found its way into the local architecture and kind of we can fix your problem by just making it really big and then you'll figure out how to live within the space. Because if we try to do that on paper up front, it's going to take us a lot more time, and time equals money and da 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 da. And so it's been something that we've been, I don't know, almost just like these like constantly, telling our clients of like, let's build smaller homes. I remember we were talking to our marketing people and I was like, is there like a good way that we could say like dumb people build huge homes? And he's like, no, we cannot say that. I was like, but yeah, like there's such better ways to figure out how to solve the problems that we have in space without just making it excessively large and not to mention the fact that with these excessively large homes, we're seeing families that really should be well connected within space that now have all of their own corners of the house to go and hide from one another. And so it's like just philosophically for us on like a personal level, coming from a family that was, kind of always around each other. Maybe that was just because of the sheer number of people, but just creating spaces where people can connect and so on. But
well, so what do you think of this idea? You mentioned intentionality. One of my favorite quotes last year was boundaries create freedom. I say it all the time. Anyone who listens to the podcast is going to be tired of me saying this. But anyway, where I'm going with this is price is a boundary. Size is a boundary. Location's a boundary. Honestly, the more boundaries we have, the clearer the picture becomes. I remember one time asking a sculptor, it was a beautiful sculpted piece of rock. And I said, just because I'm interested in how people do things, how do you end up here? And he's like, when I start with a big piece of rock, I am just taking away the things that don't belong. And I thought that was really, really a succinct way of saying like, it's minimalism. They're taking away and leaving what remains is what they're looking for. And it's like creating in the opposite. We take something that's blank and assemble it. He was taking something that was assembled and removing it to reveal something different. I appreciate the elegance of that. And where I was going with this is we grew up, and I understand that this is not everyone, in the world we're in with technology now, it distracts us all the time. I was fortunate enough to grow up and we never had a TV in our house. And so I really enjoyed that. It was also all I knew. It's just how I grew up. And so we were outside all the time. We were playing. We got really into sports. I read a ton of books. And so that informed. I realized I was different at a very early age, just when you go to people's homes and you don't understand it as a kid. Now as an adult, and knowing that like our phones, our iPads, everything is constantly begging for our attention. How do we as home builders create these spaces of refuge and quiet? Because everything in this life is only trying to take away our attention more and more and more and more. And I say this because I don't know the answer, but I'm trying to help people. I bring it up in conversation to see how people react to it. But in my spec home, I don't have kids that are teenagers. I have young kids. So at some point soon, I'm going to have to deal with some of these things that are bigger issues. And one of the things I've heard from another parent that I've sort of modeled is if I build a home that has smaller bedrooms, then the children have to be in the common spaces, which is where I want my family to be. I'm not saying that you don't need alone time or kids don't need their space, but and again, these are my boundaries, so they don't have to be someone else's boundaries. And there's obviously a middle here, but I just think it's really interesting. Sometimes I'll share that story with people, and sometimes they'll respond, like they'll say, "Oh yeah, I like that," or you'll hear people say, like, "I don't need a giant owner suite. I don't need a sitting room." It's very rare for me anyway, where someone says, "I do want to retire to my owner suite and like watch TV and read a book all by myself." I think I can think of one person in 20 years that's ever said that. And I understand they exist. They just haven't been my clientele. And so I guess I'm just saying, when we ask questions, are we helping them or are we hurting them? And how are we? Because a lot of our job is of course listening, but it's asking the questions and then seeing how they respond. Because a lot of times I don't think the clients even know what questions to ask. And so it's kind of up to us as builders to ask those questions and to think about it to elicit a response.
Yeah. I think it's along those lines you were talking about earlier, like the price per square foot question that oftentimes gets asked. And Andrew and I talk about this a lot, is a lot of, clients will come to us and they're like, "I've never done this before," and so some of the questions that they have come from like a place of ignorance, not in that these people are not these are very intelligent, very successful doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs that we're working with. But some of the questions come from this place of ignorance. And I think that the question asking part of it is us also helping to kind of lead them in that process of thought of like figuring out what they truly want. And so I think like price per square foot, it's really interesting because we say like most times this is the largest financial transaction that any of our clients have ever made, and they're probably starting it from a place of having the least amount of or experience in making the decisions, which from the way that we've structured our business on the interior, like having interior design integrated and all that sort of stuff, we've tried to say like, yes, that is where you start, but here's how we help. But I think I love that idea of using the questioning of how you live life, and do you host for holidays? If you do host, who are you hosting? And that might also, not only is how big does the table need to be, it's also what type of bathroom should we have in the bedrooms, and how are we going to use bathrooms? And if your sister and her kids are coming to stay with you, what does that look like? And how do we make sure that this home is tailored to the way you live life? So yeah. Anything to add to that, Andrew?
I think every market is like this right now, but I felt like the square footage conversation was harder 5 years ago than it is today. And I think now it's the cost of construction is really our ally in a way when it comes to building more intentional spaces, because clients are required, because of how expensive things are, to build more intentionally.
Right.
Like it's not something that we have to convince them to do. It's something they have to do. We just have to figure out how to design these homes to be as efficient as they possibly can. And so that I think that's kind of helping us solve the problem. Our market, again, is we're not landlocked. There's nothing around Columbus other than space. And with space, you can throw more big houses up. And I think our restricting factor now is becoming price, is what we're experiencing.
That boundary.
That boundary.
I think in Europe, I think some of this is cultural, and you just brought up something I hadn't considered, that price will help us build homes that are more intentional and smaller, because we can make the home smaller, or we can use different products. That's about the only things we should do. Usually what they ask you to do is build the same house and you just make less, which if this podcast does one thing, it's I want builders to make more money, because
amen, brother.
We are already undercharge. Every single builder in the country undercharges. I don't care who you are, you undercharge.
100%. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you weigh the liability of building what we build, the structure, beyond do you warrant this product for 1 year, or do you warrant this product because you stand behind your work? We just did some work on, actually one of the first projects that we ever did was for a family friend, and we just rebuilt the chimney that was flashed in properly. That was done in 2012. And it's one of those things where we're like, there is nothing on paper that says that we should be responsible for rebuilding this, but it's like, and so when you do, like going back to what you said, is undercharging and being undercompensated. And, what we find sometimes is that there are builders in the market that are desperate for work and have kind of created a black market. And I've met with several younger builders, even younger than us, that I've said, like, the worst thing that you can possibly do is be good at what you do and not charge enough, because you make it impossible for any of us to charge enough, because you're actually pretty damn good at what you do.
So, I don't know where that narrative comes from. I suspect that's a whole podcast all in itself. But I think part of it is, look back in your career. You guys been around for 13 years. And so you look back early on, you'd rake leaves, you'd sweep the street, you would have shoveled, you would have done everything. And I'm not saying that urgency to do anything and everything is gone, but also understanding what your worth is. I think it takes a little maturity, and it takes a little time, and people figure out at different points in their career. Not every path is linear, and not everyone ages obviously differently. And so in terms of their mental capacity and even their skill set, right? Like, I hope, like, I am a better builder today than I was previously. I always built really good homes. I'm proud of every home I've ever built. I always assembled it with really good team, but I just know more. I think it's akin to sports, right? Tom Brady used to always say, if he could, however old he was when he retired, 44 or whatever, if he could go back as a 22-year-old and have the same knowledge set with his physical abilities, which were never astounding, his mind was always his greatest weapon, how much further on would you be? And so I think there's a place for everything. I was mentioning this the other day, of like, someone asked me the question, like, what would you do differently if you could go back and tell your younger self something from an older self? And one of it is just confidence. When things are going good, like you can't be stopped, like you're on fire. And when things are going bad, I mean, it's that you can't give your houses away. And it's, call it desperation. Every business is not exclusive to building. It's the sales cycle. It's up and down. And you mentioned like when things are really slow, it's like, man, you got to tighten your belt. What do? Do you work harder? Do you cast a bigger net? Do you take a lower margin? The problem is when you start getting away from who you are and what your brand is. I mean, everyone has to put food on their table and pay their mortgage and pay their people. So I get it. Sometimes you have to be more aggressive, but I hope that people are being more aggressive with a strategy, because if we do it, all we're doing is we're all going to the lowest common denominator. We're all just taking money out of each other's pockets. For who? For the homeowners. And I'm not saying we don't value them. We do. But if you really valued somebody, you'd give them the truth. This is what it costs to build your house. It'd be like a surgeon. If you went into the surgeon and said, hey, I need heart surgery. And you're like, yeah, I really don't want to do heart surgery. Can you could you adjust my kneecap? You're like, what? Excuse me? No, I need you have an issue with your heart. Is there nobody ever asked their doctor, like, hey, could you do it at the cheaper way? Like, could you use that old scalpel to maybe have
a discount heart transplant?
Yeah, no. I like, my cousin is a roofer up in Alaska, and he's like, he goes, I want my surgeon to be driving a Ferrari. In fact, I want him to show up differently in a different colored Ferrari every day. He's like, I want to know he's making it bank, because you know what? He's got my life in his hands. I want him to be good and well compensated.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think that some of that too is low barrier to entry. I think, I don't know what it's like in your market in terms of like if you have to have a license to build, but in the Columbus market, it seems like if you have a cell phone and can write your name, you can become a home builder. And so I think some of that is seeing a lot of guys in the trades who look at home builders and think you guys are making all the money. Some of that I think is because there's a lot of home builders that don't really understand the money that they're making, and they think that because it's in their bank account, it's theirs, which is not really the case. And so you see a lot of guys driving trucks that they can make the monthly payment on, but maybe not really afford when it comes down to it. And so there's like this lure of like pulling people from the trades wanting to become home builders, but not really having that business acumen to really understand, like, are we profitable? What should we be charging? And quite honestly, like, we have, when people are like, how did you guys get to where you are and building these types of houses? I'm like, man, we have been very blessed that we've been able to fail forward. We've been able to learn from our mistakes, correct. We were at the right place at the right time. Like, the Columbus market is absolutely booming. We've had a lot of blessing in our life that has allowed us to figure out how to correct the errors bad assumptions when it comes to pricing or estimating, or the wrong pricing model. And I don't know, I think that you go back to like, why do we not charge enough? I think it's because there is this reality that there's competition from people who don't really understand their business, because it's so stinking easy for them to get into business.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 20 years, I've been using Pella windows, and I couldn't be happier to call them as a business partner, a trade partner, and someone that really supports us in our quality builds. We use wood windows and doors on every single one of our homes, and 98% of every home that I've ever built has been a Pella window. I've gotten to know their team here locally as well as nationally, and the way that they support us as a craftsman, as well as they support our homeowners with their lifelong guarantee, has actually been a game changer for me. So when people ask me who I use, I recommend Pella. If you want to hear more about Pella's story, you can listen to episode 1, where I interview Peter and Ed from Pella Northland about their journey into the Pella ownership. I think sometimes it's hard to run a business and because you want to have a heart, and we're going back to the beginning of the podcast, we're building with people. And I know I don't know if you guys find this challenging. I assume you do, but you can answer for yourself. So I'll be building a home, and I'll look at their face, and like, I can tell they can't afford a certain part of it. Yeah. And because if they can't afford the house, like, I can't build them. I mean, I have a for-profit business, as all businesses should be.
You're not a magician.
Right. But we are conscientious. Like, I want it for them. Like, I gift giving is one of my love languages. Yeah. And so it's like, if I can give them the gift of, and it's fun to have surprise, but like, I look back at my clients who are the happiest. My happiest clients are the ones that we've actually done the best financially on. Because guess what? I give them the best service. I give them the most like upgrades at no cost. I give them like kind of the hospitality is so much better, because But guess what? We're not struggling. It's like swimming with an anchor around your neck.
Yeah.
Your only goal is to survive to another day, where if you're in a boat, you're like, you know what? I can jump out of the boat right now and I'll be fine. I can get back in the boat. And I think when we position our business in a place that's really healthy, it now allows us. I think that's why at some point you become successful, or hopefully you do. And then when you do, it seems almost like, well, why do they keep getting the breaks? Or you mentioned people look at you like, man, why does Bellepoint keep getting all these great jobs? You've built something so that you can actually do those things for your clients, which guess what? Increases your reputation. It makes you easier for you and your family to do your job. I mean, it's kind of like the rain keeps coming and keeps blessing the people that already have crops. I don't know if any of that resonates with you, or how you feel about when you give it to your clients.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that the reality too is that we've, just from a very practical perspective, is we have staffed your project appropriately with someone who's knowledgeable. We haven't asked them to build, 8 houses at one time. We've given them the time that they need from a bandwidth perspective to actually achieve success. And that's a hard thing. That was a hard thing for us too. Had conversations with other builders when we were going from renovating to new construction. I'm like, we were at this point where we're just selling more project. I told them, I'm like, I felt like we had financial diarrhea. We were like grabbing the next job to get cash into our business, and nothing was left to nourish ourselves.
I have never heard that term, but that is so accurate. Financial diarrhea.
Yeah, but you think about it, like, it's a terrible analogy, but you think about it, and I'm like, if it were our bodies and that food was to give us that reaction, would it make any sense for us to be like, you know what, I'm going to double down and I'm going to eat another plate of Alfredo because that really worked the first time? At some point, like, stop. That's not healthy. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your organization. Change what you're ingesting and the way that you're ingesting it so that you can become healthy and that took confidence. That was also a big risk for us when we went from fixed price to cost plus at a time where I'm like, how are we ever going to sell a cost plus project? And again, talk about blessing. We did it pre-COVID. And so we had put systems in place that allowed us to go through COVID and the craziness that whole time in life. I feel like I had PTSD just talking about COVID, but we were very blessed in that we had systems in place that allowed us to operate in cost plus manner and have very transparent conversations with clients at a very volatile time. So
let me ask you this. So I used to do fixed bid as well for maybe the first 12, 13 years. And as we sort of scaled up to more complicated homes and bigger homes, we switched to cost plus. The way the contract reads, it's very simple. The client is taking the risk versus fixed bid. We have to charge a higher margin on fixed bid, but we are now taking the risk. It's like insurance. That makes total sense. The problem with cost plus is the client still holds you to a fixed bid, I find. And I'm just saying, like, right now we have a situation where they're on a cost plus. And so I'll lay out the scenario. The trimmer missed something on the bid. It wasn't a big number. It was very small, actually, but was it on the plan? Yes. He missed it. Our team missed seeing it, that they missed it, but it's a cost plus. I mean, the way the contract goes, the client should pay for that. Now I'm kind of stuck on this one. And I've thought about this, the way I resolved it, it's an architect that I really enjoy working with. I want to do more work with them. The client is going to refer us. So I'm going to actually use it as an opportunity to sell. I'm going to tell the homeowner, because if they don't know about it, then how can you sell it? So I'm going to say, you know what, we messed up because we didn't catch it. The trimmer also messed up because he didn't get it. This, just so you know, this, by the contract and by the law, this is something you should pay. But I want you to know, you've been such a great client that I'm going to take care of this. I think the money that I'm going to write off, I couldn't possibly buy an ad or market any better than that money spent right there with not only the architect as a client, but also as the homeowner. It took me a while to sort of reason through that. How have you approached that?
It's so hard. It is hard. Andrew's just laughing. Andrew's smirking because, like, he'll like, and we both say this sometimes. We're like, cost plus is the hardest way that you could possibly do business. Like, a fixed price would be easier because then, like what's happening in the kitchen at a restaurant, you have no idea that they're cussing and someone cut their finger and all that sort of stuff. What you ultimately see is your beautiful plate of food that gets delivered to you, and it kind of, like, that weird analogy. But I'm full of weird analogies, Mark. But I think that I have a couple thoughts. If you come in under budget on something, is the customer going to benefit from being under budget?
Yes.
And that's usually the conversation that we'll have is like, hey, we're Or humans. I think one of the things too is we try to start having these very realistic conversations in the sales phase that says we've put an estimate of cost together and we're not perfect humans. And we also don't know every element of what's going into your home. And so you should either, I will tell every single client, you're either going to start with a contingency in our contract or you're going to start with a contingency in your bank account. I don't care where the money is, but we have to be very realistic about about the fact that that number there is an estimate and you should be prepared for some level of, and
That's
one of our best clients that I've ever built for, when I had that conversation, he said, and this was like having lunch with him after the project, probably a year after the project was done. He's like, it was really funny. You had that conversation with me about contingency and kind of how I should think about that and approach it. And, you know, it was really just me setting the stage for cost plus and maybe some of the dysfunction of cost plus. He's like, it was really funny. I walked away and I didn't know, I had two thoughts in my head. Either I never want to hire this guy because he just basically told me that like it might come in over budget, or this is definitely the guy I want to work with because he is like realistic and honest enough to talk about things that aren't like rainbows and butterflies on the front side. And I think our tendency in sales is to like, we want to go like rainbows and butterflies. And then when you get into contract and you're like, well, now it's not all rainbows and butterflies, isn't it? Like our trimmer forgot something on the plan and we didn't catch it. And like, have we set the stage properly up front in the sales so that our contract can follow? Does that make sense?
No, for sure it does. And obviously, we love sales. The easiest
Yeah.
person in the world to sell to is me. We salespeople love to sell, and
Yeah.
so including ourselves. But I think you're right. I think as you get older, I think realizing that I think there is certainly an art to a sale. So I'm not going to say, having been in sales my whole life, there's certainly an art to it. But I think there is a part of it. People want to connect with people, and the art of the sales is obviously asking for the work. That's a big part of it, oversimplifying it. But sometimes just the confidence of saying what it is. And even like price, we went earlier in the conversation, we said, don't cut your own throat kind of thing. I've been in bid situations before where they said, hey, there's another builder and they're 200,000 less than you. Can you match them? And I say, no, I can't. I cannot, I don't remember the exact number, so it doesn't matter, but like, I can't match them. But if you want the level of service that we're going to provide, and if we're going to build you the home that you want built, this is what it costs to do that. If you want to change something, I'd be happy to work with you to modify it, but I can't. I've been joking lately. I can't pay my painter less by telling him to do a crappy job.
Right.
Right. I can't blindfold the painter and then tell you, well, I'll knock 20,000 off your painting bid, but he's blindfolded. Like, who knows what those cabinets look like?
Yeah, exactly.
And that client hired me because we've all seen it before where someone all of a sudden just was at a high price and all of a sudden they drop it big time. I've had a painter before where their bid was really out of whack, and I asked them and they lowered it like a massive amount. And that was a huge red flag to me because I'm like, wait a minute, if you could lower it that fast and that big, like, well, what does that mean about it? It's just interesting. So I guess my point is just being clear and owning your story. And I think people, to your point earlier about the people that respect you, like they're going to hire you because they want to work with you. And at the end of the day, I actually try to make it not a game about my home or the quality or the price. I actually just make it about the relationship. Do you want to work with our team? We're going to be here for 2 years, between 6 months in design and an year and a half of building. Like, choose the team you want to spend a year and a half of your life with.
Right.
Yeah. When we evaluate like our ideal client too, the one that comes to us and wants the relationship are the projects that we land. The one that comes to us and wants to negotiate and figure out what the price is and like that's the work we don't win, so there'll be scenarios where we go. I think that's also the advantage of being brothers and working together is there's deals that come to us and everyone gets tempted in sales. I've talked to this guy for 7 straight weeks or 6 straight months. We got to make the deal work. And Sam can be like, no. And I can tell Sam no, so that we can be guarded.
We literally have this going right now where I gave like a very high level budget to a client where it was like a $600,000 range of cost and I'm like, see this as nothing other than a zip code that I think you might land within based on what I've seen and what we've built. And, I had a call with him yesterday and he's like, would you cut your plus on your cost plus by 2%? And I was like, yeah, let me, you know, rather than just
No.
being like straight up no, I'm like, let me talk to my brother about it. And Andrew today at lunch, he's like, how did that call go? And I was like, I'll talk to you about it later. And so like we literally haven't even had a chance. That was me telling Andrew how the conversation.
You just said no. It's
yeah,
a no.
No.
but it is
Why?
right. It is funny. To your point, Mark, the best projects we have are the people who allow us to work. Like, we're going to tell you what allows us to be excellent. And if you trust us, I think we can be excellent. If we tell you what allows us to be excellent and you say, can you do it for a little less? I'm like, we're foolish to believe that we can still execute on everything the exact same when you take away parts of what allows us to be
I
excellent.
mean, the real question there that Andrew will then tell you after this call is over is, we can meet your price. What do you want to change so that we can help get you there? Are you open to us changing? And I think sometimes clients don't know what else to ask.
Right.
But if you're going on a sworn construction statement and you're showing cost plus, they see 200 line items above or whatever your calculations look like. But the only one they really remember and look at is the bottom one.
Yep.
And again, the storytelling, the narrative, they spent however long your presentation is, you're an hour, 90 minutes into it, and they get pretty roasted. And at the end, they only remember one number. What's your GC fee? Okay, I want it to go lower. So I guess that number's going lower.
Yeah.
Back to our analogy, builders don't make enough. You don't go to your doctor and negotiate his fee. You go to your doctor and say, you're the expert, I want help.
Right.
Our best clients.
Yeah. And I think that's what's tough is like, you don't know exactly what your doctor is making. And I think that's the thing is with cost plus is we're putting it right out there in front of you. Part of that is, and I've said this to clients, is I'll give you a fixed price if you can tell me absolutely everything that's going in that house, down to the style of robe hooks that are going to hang on the wall in your primary bathroom. Yep. And they're like, well, certainly we can't do that. And I'm like, well, then certainly I cannot tell you what it's going to cost. I can give you allowances and we can do all that sort of stuff. But like at the end of the day, we can do a fixed price with a mountain of allowances. Doesn't that sound a whole lot like a cost plus? Like,
don't you think that, I think ultimately what we're doing is like, who tells the best story?
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking more of like little kids, right? Like, you know, there's certain people, certain voices, you know, how they tell a story. Like you could have a book read 10 different ways, but certain people are like, ooh, they've got a great delivery. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and there are certain narrators that I'll find out what other books they like. I might just listen to one of their books just because their voice is so good. You're like, man, that is a talent. I think that is an underrated selling tool, is just the art of the storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the homes and crafting your company. And you also have a short window. I mean, I don't know what your sales cycle looks like. I mean, mine is a 15-minute phone call, a 1-hour meeting. And if they're not in a period construction agreement by then, they're not a fit. Now I'll still call on them but I mean, ultimately you're kind of like, here's the on-ramp. And it's it's going back to the dentist or doctor. Like you do a checkup, they say, hey, this is what it's going to take to do this. Great. You schedule it. Like, I think one of the benefits we have at the higher end, you know, what's called the luxury market, is most of them are professionals. Most of them are hiring you to do a professional service. So they actually kind of want you to get to the point. I mean, I've had some clients who are like, you're talking too much. Like, let's get this thing done. Like sometimes we get in our own way. I know I do, because I'm a chatterbox.
Yeah.
Andrew's laughing.
I am as well. I talk a lot.
Well, as we close, there's one
Sam talks more than me. Is that evident?
It is, yeah. On this, I'm not sure. In case the audience has known, that person that just chimed in, his name is Andrew. He's also on this podcast. But no, what I was going to say, one thing that I was going to compliment you on your website, I have never seen a job listing on a website before for a company. For those that haven't checked it out, like go to bellepointcompany.com and we'll have everything in the show notes for the exact URL. But I thought it was really cool. Like right now, I was on your website this morning. It says head of construction. You show the salaries between 100 and 135,000 a year. Marketing and brand lead is 55 to. There's no mystery about it. You're telling them exactly, like shocking. Like we are, you know, when we interview people, we sort of just leave it open. But like I found this so refreshing to like read this and see this. Tell me about how this came about, because I think this is amazing.
Yeah,
I'm going to let Andrew talk.
Yeah. So we were fortunate enough. We hired a finance and HR manager probably 18 months ago, right around then, almost 2 years ago. But anyway, so we've been working. We're in total growth mode, scale mode, and we're making a lot of hires in 2025. And so one of the initiatives we have is, were we going to reach out to an external recruiter, or were we going to recruit within? So we finally made the decision, after interviewing a significant amount of external recruiters, is to try to recruit within. We my wife is in corporate America, so we get the privilege of bouncing a lot of the things we do off of her. And she was at a tech startup that started in Columbus maybe 10 years ago and I think she was employee 100 and some, and now it was purchased by McKesson. It's a huge corporate company, but she decided to do a passion project of consulting. And one of the things that she consulted on was hiring in that process. And so she's kind of been working with our team and our HR manager. But in talking to her, one of the things they do in corporate America is salary is important. Why do you guys hide it? That's one of the most qualifying things that you can put out in front of someone. And it's the least, it's very sensitive for people to talk about. So for us, as we go, what are qualifications? Well, if you want to make between that range, then let's talk. And if not, then let's not talk. So for us, it was kind of an easy decision, but it's really abnormal to do that. We use a payroll company that our HR manager was able to build this career kind of data page off of. And we were able to post that as a part of our website with, the most important information. And we posted these, I mean, the market's crazy. I think we've had 80 to 90 applicants.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And so what do you fit? So just in general, or not just these two positions, or how long have these been available?
March 11th, which was just a refresh of the head of construction role. And then the brand and marketing went live on February 13th.
So you're talking about just a few days for the one and a month for the other, and you've had 90?
I think over 90 at this point, maybe close to 100.
So okay, now I got to ask the question, what's the pre-qualification process before it git's to you? Certainly you don't meet with 90 people.
No.
Right? How are you vetting all these applications?
We're going through each resume individually. And then if it's a resume match, we feel like it's a resume match, they'll get a phone interview with our HR manager. And at that point, we'll give them a rank. And if they rank high enough based on some qualifications that we put together, they'll get a chance to meet with Sam and myself. So we don't have to go through 90. Hopefully we get to go through enough to decide who we want to hire.
How many have you actually interviewed with out of 90?
None yet. Us personally, our HR manager is probably up to 10, maybe 8
phone interviews,
30 minutes.
Yeah. 30-minute phone interview. And she's
asking.
And a lot of that, I mean, I'm sure you've hired, but a lot of that is she doesn't know the skills. That's what we know, but are they a cultural fit? So
that's what she's weighing in on, or that's what you're weighing in on?
That's what she's weighing in on. Would it fit our culture? Do they share our values? Do they believe in the vision that we have for our company? And we've learned a lot about hiring in the 12 years we've done this. And I feel like if I were to pat ourselves on the back anywhere in the last 24 months, it's like we finally semi figured out how to hire the right person.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things is build a house for a very successful entrepreneur who started a business in his early 30s and grew it to hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. And like, this is one thing that I love about us, the clients we get to work with, is I always try to take advantage of picking their brain, asking them to lunch and saying, you've experienced it. You saw the sausage making. Let me ask you questions now. But one of the things he said to me that has stuck with me is, don't hire for who you are today, hire for who you want to become. What's the vision you have for your business? And are you hiring people today that are going to be the right fit for that vision that you have? And that was like a punch to the gut. And that goes all the way back to like, do we understand what we can afford? Do we understand how these people are going to be billable? And so we have a fractional CFO who is with us for one day a week and it's been a huge kind of a.
Do you operate on EOS, Mark?
I've interviewed several. We're thinking about doing kind of an EOS light maybe this fall. You're hiring a lot of people. Have you guys already sort of sold the jobs, and so you're backfilling the talent now, or are you front loading the talent and then going and getting the jobs?
Some.
Both.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I think that we're kind of in a position where we're like, we know that we're in a position where this works for this period of time, and beyond that we have to go and sell a lot more work for it to work long term, which I can tell you like is for me is like frightening, like that part of it, because there's this other idea of, as a custom home builder, like I could go build one of these houses by myself and probably make the same amount of money and not have to manage all these people and not have all this stress. But what do I want this to be in the future? And I mentioned to you in some of the emails that the email that I sent this morning is like, we're really passionate about building a great company that builds great houses. And I think that like that's not the Sam and Andrew show. That is a team of people who get the vision and are encouraged and have hopes for financial success of their own within the Bellepoint organization. And so I think going back to what I was saying initially is just really trying to hire people, understanding what we can afford and hiring people for the future Bellepoint, not the current Bellepoint. And that's, again,
we also need people. We have
Yeah.
too much work and not enough people.
Yeah.
Which is a good problem to have.
Are you guys self-performing anything?
We have two interior trim carpenters but they don't have enough capacity to really manage other than they do a lot of our specialty work. So
Yeah.
2 guys on our staff. Everything else is sub-based.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I would say it's such an important part for anyone listening to this who's contemplating hiring new employees is like understanding their numbers, understanding their capacity and their hours and their utilization and all of that sort of stuff that seems like, hey, I'm so busy, certainly I need help. And we've been there. We bring people into the organization and we don't have those numbers in front of us and the metrics, and we don't know how to reward them for good work, or we don't know when to get rid of them for bad work and all those sort of things. And so that's been something.
We've really taken a unique approach here at Bellepoint where, as Sam said, we failed forward, but what we knew how to do is do really good work.
Mm-hmm.
And now what we're figuring out in year 13 is how to run a really healthy business.
Yeah.
So not that we don't still do good work. Now we're just, we get to do good work and we get to prioritize running a really healthy business.
Yeah, I wish we would have. I mean, every episode is great. This would be, we could do whole nother podcast just on your adoption of EOS. I mean, I feel like a lot of builders do it and they're very successful and they like it. Yeah, I'd love to chat with you more about it. We'll bring you on in a year and chat more about it. Yeah. How long have you guys been in it?
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Just over 2 years.
Yeah. And the team buy-in has been great too, I assume.
Great.
Bit, yeah. Like we're Andrew and I will finish this meeting. We'll have our construction division. It's called a D10. So we'll have our construction D10, and we've got guys coming in who are like looking at data points that were never being looked at before. And you see these guys, like their eyes getting bright when they see their, like, because we're cost plus. So we only make plus when there's cost. And so we look at COGS on a weekly basis that is like the key performance indicator of your project is like, are we hitting these average weekly COGS on your project? And if we are, that means we're probably on schedule, because usually the electrician doesn't send a bill until he's finished with the work. And then they begin to get it. And when we talk about like, hey, at year end and we look at our annual budgets, they really have a understanding of like how their project impacts that bottom line.
Did you end up hiring a EOS implementer to kind of help you onboard all that?
We
Are
did.
they still with you now?
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How are they?
We meet with her on Monday.
Yeah.
How often?
We meet with her quarterly, and then we have like a more intensive annual at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can, if we want to call her every day, we could.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the type of relationship.
Very available.
We don't do that. We don't have the time to do that, but very available.
Actually, the same group that she's with, or Peter Martin.
I think he uses the same company she.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've met them before. It was like Pinnacle or
Yeah.
I met them.
Hey, we'll introduce you to Rebecca. She can fly up to Minneapolis.
Yeah, I will tell you, man, one thing, when we first looked at that pricing, I was like, how could we ever afford this? And then I like started to think about it. I'm like, you know what? This is a personal trainer for our business. And like, I'm looking around and we could really use a flipping personal trainer as a business. And it was one of those, like, there we go, hand up. We could also, if you're watching in video form, you can also use personal trainers.
Hey, speak for yourself. But, keep my name out of your mouth.
Anyway, I think it was one of those things where we were just like, we want to be healthy. We want this to be healthy. We want this to have longevity. We want our clients.
What does legacy look like?
Right. What does legacy look like? Our largest financial investment. Like, are we going to be here tomorrow? And, also respecting that. Like, we just don't want to be a one-off builder. And so we've had to sacrifice in places because we've invested money there that we haven't been able to put into our bank accounts necessarily. But it's been for the future Bellepoint and what we're trying to become.
I love everything we've heard. We'll have everything in the show notes. We could talk for 2 more hours, but we better cap it here. Thanks again for tuning into the Curious Builder podcast. And you guys can reach out to Andrew and Sam through their Instagram handle, as well as their website. We'll have everything in the show notes. Thanks again for coming on, boys. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much,
Appreciate it, Mark.
We'll see you. Bye.
We're excited to announce that the Curious Builder collectives are going into 3 other states. For those not familiar with what the collective is, it lives between what the Contractor Coalition is and a Builder 20 group. What we do in each state is we have a group of 25 to 30 builders that get in a room, and you break up into groups of 9. You spend 45 minutes talking about a set topic, whether it's branding, marketing, contracts, whatever that set topic is for that day. And then you talk for 45 minutes, you get up, you mix up the groups, and you do it again, and you're out of there. You'll be out in under 3 hours. We're going to be going to Phoenix, Arizona. Brad Levitt is going to be leading a Curious Collective in Phoenix, Arizona. We are going to San Antonio. We've got David and Angela Penske from Penske Homes leading a group down there. And we have Brad Robinson and Vince Longo in Atlanta, Georgia, also leading a collective, as well as obviously me in Minnesota as well for our second annual collective. So if you're interested in collaborating with other builders, if you really want to dive deep on your business in a person-to-person relationship, ask a lot of questions, the collectives are for you. We also have in Minnesota an interior design collective, as well as the architect collective. Check out the events page at thecuriousbuilderpodcast.com. Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder Podcast. If you like this episode, do us a favor, share it with 3 other business owners. The best way that we can spread what we're doing is by word of mouth, and with your help, we can continue to help other curious builders expand their business. Please share it with your friends, like and review online, and thanks again for tuning in.